Thanks for signing up to these 3 videos. My name's Tim Walter and I run Knights Rose. Knights Rose was set up to explore some of the strange things that were happening in my life and try and work out why they were happening. More and more people have become interested in what I'm doing, and so you've probably come here today because you feel there's something in your life that you want to change. So part 1, what have we got? It's called The World Is Not What It Seems. That is about looking at the world differently. And what I aim to show you is how we tend to live in a sort of hypnotised state in which the same patterns of emotions and stresses play out and will continue to play out until we stop them. And that's the crucial bit. They'll continue to play out. You'll be playing through the same scenarios, the same emotional scenarios, unless you resolve the issues that in fact life is trying to teach you. Part 2, the subtle world is a real world. Now, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by the subtle world? The subtle world is the world that I perceive just beyond our 5 senses. Something that we can access through dowsing. And again, if you haven't heard of dowsing, then I'll tell you all about that and what that is. 4 steps towards a wise world. Part 3 is where I give you some nuts and bolts, 4 major key steps that will enable you to move forward from these 3 videos and really put them into action in your daily life. So who am I to be talking to you about this sort of stuff? Well, in the early 80s I was trained as a filmmaker. I used to do business television, make commercials, pop promos. At the time I had one particular client. About 80% of my income, 80% of my work, maybe more, used to come from this one client, and it was a big life assurance company. And I was a freelance consultant for them. At its peak, we were producing numerous training and sales promotional video programs, and I had teams of highly talented production personnel working for me on several different projects. Needless to say, I didn't really have time to think. Along with my wife, I was bringing up 2 great kids, and we bought this amazing Georgian townhouse in a small village on the Welsh borders. Soon after we moved in there, all my work, and I mean 90%, 95% of it, stopped overnight. Head office of this big financial services company decided that they weren't going to run the UK operation anymore, and they pulled the plug. So all my income virtually stopped overnight. And that was a shock, but it gave me a chance to reflect on what I was really about. And as you'll come to see during the course of these videos, this is quite often what happens in life. Life will creep up on you if you don't pay attention to what's going on and give you a big surprise and force you to change. Whereas in fact it's a lot easier, a lot smoother if you actually make the decision to change ourselves, but you can only do that if you keep an eye on what's going on around you. What I know now, of course, is that you can get through these periods of stress just by kind of riding the wave, riding the change and staying with your constant, which is yourself, which is your own grounded power, when you understand yourself. Now at this point, I didn't have any of that knowledge and understanding, so I was all over the shop. But what I did do, however, I stopped being a corporate consultant and I started making films about this sort of stuff. And the first one I made was a film called The Spirit of the Serpent, which I made with Hamish Miller. I had the pleasure of interviewing Stephen Russell, the Barefoot Doctor, with his fascinating take on the whole Taoist philosophy. And there were people like David Icke. I had the surprising pleasure of interviewing David Icke. And then there were others that in a completely different field, people like Paul Davies, the theoretical physicist. I was lucky enough to film him. One of the really interesting things that I'm going to be able to show you in these 3 videos is the way that the human mind really does interact with the physical environment, and there are ways of seeing that. You can see for yourself. I will teach you a way through dowsing to see for yourself how your presence affects your immediate environment. The world is not as it seems because the viewer definitely has a role to play in the whole process of creation, moment by moment by moment. And that's what's really interesting. That is what we're going to be looking at. And I'm going to teach you how to understand that and how to get closer to that and how to affect it yourself. So yes, we're talking about manifestation process. Hopefully that makes sense. Yes, we're talking about creating your own reality in a self-development sort of way. But we're also going to look at some of the ancient wisdom and some of the things that I've learnt from my mentor, Hamish Miller, when he was studying through dowsing the flows of geomagnetic energy around ancient sacred sites. Obviously we can't get all of that in just 20-30 minutes of video, but we'll be touching on these things and hopefully you'll find it interesting enough to be able to follow on with me and some other point as well.
Each stone has a separate spiral around it. The radials go right out from way out from the stones, but they don't.
Why is it important to look at life differently? Because it gives you freedom. All the time that we're running around in our habitual focus, our heads buried in the way that we think life should be, we're not in control of our lives. We're not in control of where our decisions will take us. And the first step to gaining that freedom is to actually pay attention to where you are in your life each moment of the day. Now, some of the things I'm going to say might sound a bit poncy and a bit philosophical, a bit airy-fairy. And I'm going to use language that you might not be familiar with. But the first step is to be aware of your being, your whole self, no matter what you are doing. And this is the crucial thing. Most of the time we do not focus on the here and now. Most of the time we are flitting our thoughts through to what we will be doing in the future or what we did do in the past. Heaven forbid that we actually stay present. When we stay present, we are focused and we are in the flow of all that is. I know it sounds fluffy, but it's true. So when you're washing up, be aware of everything that you're doing as you put the crockery into the dishwasher. I assume that's what you do. Or if you do it the old way, then as your hands go into the water, be aware of what that feels like and what are you thinking, and be present. As you brush your teeth, be aware of every brush stroke, every feeling in your gum of what that process is like, and think about it in terms of being conscious and your mind focused in that moment. That's a really important step, because that will start to be the lever. It's actually called mindfulness. There's a whole range of things and books that you can buy about mindfulness, but the key is just to stop and break your habit. Where is my mind now? Say to yourself every moment that you can. One of the crucial things is that this will enable you to start making choices that are really your choices. Because one of the things that you've got to do when you wake up, when you start to wake up and become aware of your own thoughts, is to then look at those thoughts and decide, are these mine? I know it sounds strange. Are these truly my thoughts? Or are they something that was built from your father or your mother? When you were 4 years old, they may have said something, and in that impressionable age, you thought, that is the way I must respond. And thereafter, all your decisions of a certain type have been based on a falsehood, because it was based on a misunderstanding, or simply on your mother's or your father's attitude to life. Why continue that? But until you try to find the honesty of the decision and to verify to yourself it is honestly, truthfully, what you really feel and want, you won't know how difficult that is. Now, hopefully, you're actually already in an honest place with yourself. And all I'm talking about here is an honesty with yourself. It's about telling yourself little white lies or not, or stopping telling yourself little white lies. Those little white lies that don't hurt anybody. Well, they do, actually. They hurt yourself, because what they do is they break your connection with the manifestation process. Understanding how to get to the truth of a decision and how to stop and be mindful is crucial in allowing you to be able to move forward in your own life the way that you want to, because it enables you to have the confidence in yourself, and you become the constant, the thing that you can rely on in all of this change that's happening all the time and will only increase in speed. When you can rely on yourself, you have your power. Because what you'll find as you get more used to actually analysing what's going on and being more in tune with your own decision-making process, that you will actually start to see things in the environment that you hadn't noticed before. And what's really interesting is that you'll actually start to see things that look as though they are only there just for you. And it's possible that they might be. Now that can be quite freaky, but you can also have quite a lot of fun with it. Don't go looking for these things to start with. Wait until they start to appear and then you can start to play with them. You have to wait and let the world process, the external environment process in its own time, and it will process you in its own time in the same way as you are processing it in your own time. So don't go looking for these little signs, but be aware they may be there, and when you start to see them, be grateful for them to whoever. Just enjoy them. So we're drawing to a close on this first video, and I hope you've picked up a few nuggets anyway along the line and seen where we're going to go with this in 2 and 3. What we've learned in this video is 1, to understand that we live habitually in a semi-hypnotic state unless we are mindful of what we are thinking. When you are mindful of what you're thinking, you can break the habit. The second thing to observe is where your mind is when you start to break your habitual thinking. Observe the thoughts within your body. You can very often find that you have a twinge in the back, or your stomach is really tight when you have certain thoughts. Start to try and associate the thoughts with the physical feeling in your body. Because what you're starting to do at this point is to realise that there is a connection between thought and the physicality. In other words, what goes on in your mind and what goes on in your physical body. Third, have fun with being mindful and see if you can pick up on any visual signs in the external environment as you go about your daily life. And then finally, analyse the choices that you make. Make a decision to change something. And as you make that decision to change, look at the decision you've made and analyse, is it really your decision, your choice? Are you being true to yourself, or are you using a habitual default decision-making process? So that's it for video 1. In video 2, we're going to start to look at the external world and help you access a whole raft of intuitive faculties that you've never known you had.